It's been said that Bigfoot exhibits nocturnal behavior, perhaps to hunt or to avoid detection.
A lot of people said he found so much evidence. He was outside all the time, and he found prints here and he found prints there.
In the remote wilderness of Alaska lies a forgotten town with a chilling secret, Portlock. Once a thriving fishing village, it was abandoned after rumors of a terrifying creature, the Nanak, began to spread. But what drove an entire community to flee in terror? This is the haunting tale of how a monstrous force from the woods shattered lives and left behind a ghost town, its mysteries still unsolved. The Whisper of the Woods. In the mist-covered forests of Alaska, where towering pine trees sway and the cold air hangs heavy with mystery, there is a story. A tale of terror so powerful that it drove an entire town to flee, leaving behind only empty streets and vacant homes. The name of this town is Portlock, and what began as a hopeful settlement turned into a haunted ghost town, forever marked by the fear of something monstrous that lived in the woods. Portlock, founded in the early 1900s, seemed like a perfect place to settle. Nestled along the shores of a quiet bay, it was surrounded by rich forests, perfect for fishing and hunting. The land was bountiful, and the settlers who moved there thought they had discovered an untouched paradise. Yet from the moment they set foot in the area, they felt a strange unease. A presence, something watching from the dense woods. The indigenous Alutiiq people, who had lived in the area for centuries, were wary of outsiders encroaching on their land. They had legends, stories passed down from generation to generation about a giant creature that stalked the forests. This creature, called the Nanak, was described as a towering human-like beast covered in fur, with glowing eyes and an insatiable hunger for human flesh. But the settlers, eager to tame the wilderness, dismissed these warnings as mere superstition. At first, life in Portlock was peaceful. The settlers built their homes, set up fishing camps, and began to prosper. However, soon, the villagers began hearing strange sounds emanating from the woods. Groans, howls, and the occasional bone-chilling growl. Some believed it was the wind. Others thought it was the call of a wild animal. But then, animals began to disappear. Cattle were found mutilated, their bodies torn apart in ways that suggested no natural predator could be responsible. It wasn't long before people started vanishing as well. The first person to disappear was Thomas Barker, a young hunter who had ventured into the forest alone. After several days, his body was found, mutilated, his limbs twisted in unnatural ways. It was a gruesome sight, one that sent shockwaves through the community. Fear began to spread like wildfire. With no clear explanation, many of the villagers began whispering about the Nanak. The settlers, once so sure of their place on the land, were now unsure. Could this legendary creature be real? Was there something in the forest that they didn't understand? Or had the settlers unknowingly stirred up something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined? But what could be so powerful that it would tear apart an entire community? Was it the Nanak, or something darker that had awakened in the wilds of Portlock? The legend of Nanak. The Alutiiq people had lived in Alaska for thousands of years, their culture steeped in stories of spirits, monsters, and guardians of the land. The legend of the Nanak was one of the oldest and most feared stories in their folklore. Descriptions of the creature varied, but one thing was consistent. It was enormous, a towering figure standing taller than any man. It had long, matted hair, sharp claws, and glowing eyes that would pierce the darkest of nights. Some believed it was a protector of the wilderness, a being whose purpose was to ensure the balance of nature was maintained. Others saw it as a vengeful spirit, one that would punish those who dared disturb the sacred land. The settlers, having no knowledge of these stories, initially laughed at the notion of a creature like the Nanak. They believed they could conquer any challenge the land presented. But as the months passed, and strange events began to escalate, even the most skeptical among them began to reconsider. More people vanished, hunters, fishermen, and children. Each disappearance was followed by bizarre reports. In one case, a fisherman was found near the water, his body torn apart as if something had mauled him with claws. His eyes were wide open, frozen in terror. No one could explain what had happened. Another time, a group of men ventured out into the forest to track down a missing person. They reported hearing heavy footsteps behind them, something following them through the trees. Yet when they turned to confront it, there was nothing there. The first real proof that something was lurking in the woods came when two men, armed with rifles, set out to hunt the creature that was terrorizing the village. They reported seeing large, glowing eyes watching them from the shadows of the trees, but when they tried to approach, they were forced to retreat, overwhelmed by an intense feeling of dread and fear. As they turned to leave, they spotted enormous footprints in the snow. Footprints unlike anything they had ever seen before. They were too large to belong to any known animal, and the shape was utterly unfamiliar. The creature was no longer just a myth. It had become a terrifying reality. The settlers who had once believed they could tame the wilderness were now faced with a force of nature far beyond their understanding. But the sightings and the fear were only the beginning. What the townspeople didn't know was that the creature in the forest was not only hunting them, it was guarding something even more ancient and dangerous. The ghostly attacks. As the terror intensified, it wasn't just the physical attacks that gripped the residents of Portlock. It was the haunting presence of the creature, something that seemed to haunt their every waking moment. People began experiencing disturbing visions, hearing unsettling sounds, and feeling a constant sense of being watched. The most disturbing reports came from those who ventured into the forest at night. One man, who had gone to check his traps, described hearing a deep growl, followed by a loud crash as something enormous broke through the trees. He said he saw glowing eyes in the distance, but when he called out, the creature retreated deeper into the woods. When he returned to town, he spoke of an overwhelming sense of fear and dread that had paralyzed him in the presence of the beast. Other survivors reported similar experiences, feeling like they were being stalked, hunted by something that was never fully seen. There were also accounts of people disappearing without a trace, only to later be found in unnatural positions, their bodies twisted in horrifying ways. It was as though the Nanak, or whatever it was, had been playing with its victims before claiming them. Perhaps the most chilling encounter occurred when a group of children went missing one night. They had been playing near the forest's edge when they vanished. The town organized a search party, but despite days of searching, the children were never found. All that remained were deep, claw-like marks on the trees and a trail of broken branches leading into the heart of the forest. It was as if the creature had taken them, leaving only the eerie remnants of its hunt behind. The fear of the Nanak had become all-consuming. People locked their doors at night, and families began leaving in droves. Yet, the more they left, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. Portlock was becoming a ghost town, deserted, abandoned, and haunted by a dark force that seemed to linger in the shadows. But what if the creature wasn't just hunting the villagers for food? What if there was a deeper, darker purpose behind its attacks? The truth beneath the forest. The truth about Portlock's mysterious downfall did not come from the survivors. Instead, it came from the land itself. Over the years, as investigators and paranormal experts descended on the abandoned town, they began to uncover details that no one had suspected. It wasn't just the Nanak hunting the villagers. It was the land itself that had been disturbed, and with it, an ancient power had awoken. Scientists studying the area discovered that Portlock was built on what was once a sacred site for the Alutiiq people, a place where powerful rituals were performed to honor the spirits of the land. The town's construction had unwittingly violated these sacred grounds, disturbing the spirits that had been bound there for centuries. The Nanak, it seemed, was not merely a creature of the forest. It was a guardian, one that had been awakened to protect the sacred land from further intrusion. But the truth was even more unsettling. Researchers uncovered evidence of a long-forgotten burial ground deep within the forest, where ancient bones were discovered. The bones seemed to be those of giants, humanoid beings much larger than ordinary humans. The presence of these giants suggested that the area had been a place of immense spiritual significance long before the arrival of the settlers. The more the researchers uncovered, the more it became clear. The Nanak was not just a protector of the forest. It was a force tied to something ancient, something far beyond the comprehension of the settlers who had dared to build a town on this cursed ground. The terror that had plagued Portlock was not simply the work of a creature. It was the result of an ancient spiritual awakening, one that was determined to drive the invaders away. What does this mean for the town's future? Could the land still be cursed? And is the Nanak truly gone? Or has the creature only been waiting for the right moment to return? The silence of the woods. Today, Portlock stands as a desolate reminder of what once was. The last of the residents fled decades ago, leaving behind only empty homes and overgrown streets. The fear of the Nanak, the terror of its attacks, has faded into history, but the memory of that fear still lingers. Researchers continue to visit the area, documenting their findings, but none have been able to explain the full extent of the mysterious happenings that once plagued the town. Some believe the Nanak is still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Others argue that the creature was simply a manifestation of the collective fears of the settlers, a legend that grew over time until it became something real in the minds of the people. But the truth may lie somewhere in between. Perhaps the Nanak is not just a creature. It is a symbol, a manifestation of the land's power and the ancient forces that still govern it. The curse of Portlock may not be over, but it is hidden, waiting for the next intrusion, the next group of people who dare to disturb the land. Will the curse of Portlock ever truly be lifted? Or will the land continue to claim any who venture too close? Unearthly findings. As the decades passed, Portlock remained undisturbed, its ghostly presence slowly being overtaken by nature's reclaiming grasp. But the town's mystery never ceased to intrigue those who dared to visit. Over the years, many paranormal investigators, cryptozoologists, and archaeologists had ventured into the area, hoping to uncover the truth behind the disappearances and the frightening events that had plagued Portlock. In recent years, a breakthrough came when an expedition led by a team of cryptozoologists and scientists arrived in Portlock with one mission: to discover whether the Nanak was indeed a real creature, or if it had all been a myth. The team, equipped with high-tech cameras, motion sensors, and sound recorders, ventured deep into the Alaskan wilderness. The first discovery came when the team found what appeared to be ancient carvings on the trees, symbols that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. These symbols resembled those found in Alutiiq mythology, with some looking suspiciously like ancient spiritual sigils meant to ward off evil. The carvings were deep, as though they had been scratched into the bark by claws. Giant claws, far too large to belong to any creature known to man. As the investigators continued their trek through the forest, they made another chilling discovery. They stumbled upon what seemed like an ancient burial site, long forgotten by time. Human remains were uncovered, but they were unlike any known human bodies. The bones were massive, more than twice the size of an average person's. Some of the skulls appeared to have been crushed, possibly by the weight of an immense creature or some sort of ancient weapon. The discovery raised more questions than answers. Were these the bones of the original inhabitants of the land, perhaps giants who once roamed the area? Were they the remains of a long-forgotten tribe? The researchers were left baffled, unable to explain how such gigantic human-like beings had once inhabited Alaska's wilds. The implications were staggering. If the remains were of giants, it meant that Portlock's curse was not merely about the Nanak, but perhaps about something far older and more dangerous. Beings of immense power who had been buried and forgotten. Could the creature that the settlers had encountered be tied to this ancient history? Could it have been one of the guardians of the land, left to protect its secrets for millennia? But the mystery was far from over. The truth behind the Nanak seemed to be far deeper than anyone had ever imagined. Could these giant bones be a clue to the true origin of the terror in Portlock? The return of the Nanak. The excavation team, having uncovered these strange artifacts and remains, theorized that they had stumbled upon the key to the entire mystery. The Nanak was not merely a mythical creature, but a guardian of the ancient land, linked to the spirits and beings of a bygone era. As they delved further into the archives of Alutiiq folklore, the researchers uncovered accounts of ancient guardians, beings who had protected sacred land from outsiders, just as the Nanak had done for centuries. Some of the folklore even described the Nanak as a being born from the earth itself, an entity whose sole purpose was to protect the balance of nature and the spiritual harmony of the land. These guardians, according to the stories, were capable of great violence, punishing those who disturbed the natural order with terrifying consequences. But as the team uncovered more records and testimonies, they began to piece together a chilling possibility. The Nanak might not be alone. There were reports of other, even larger creatures said to roam the forests of Alaska. These creatures, like the Nanak, were often described as having immense size, supernatural strength, and a powerful presence. Some believed that these creatures were all part of a hidden lineage of beings, guardians of ancient and sacred places, protecting lands that humans were never meant to settle. The researchers speculated that Portlock had been founded atop an ancient burial ground, one that had disturbed the spirits of the land. The Nanak, in this case, was merely a servant of these spirits, summoned to drive away anyone who dared to trespass. As the team ventured deeper into the forest, they began to experience unsettling phenomena: whispers in the wind, glowing eyes in the distance, and a constant feeling of being watched. The forest itself seemed to come alive, reacting to their presence. Could it be that they had awakened something? Had their digging disturbed a force that was never meant to be disturbed? The team reported strange occurrences: footsteps following them when no one was there, the distant sound of growls echoing through the trees, and even the unmistakable sensation of something massive moving in the shadows. It was as if the forest had become alive with the presence of an unseen force, something watching them, guiding them, perhaps even leading them into a deeper and darker part of the forest, where the greatest secrets of Portlock lay hidden. What awaited the expedition team deeper into the forest? Was the Nanak truly a guardian? Or was it something even older and more terrifying, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself? The Night of Reckoning. As the researchers pressed forward into the heart of Portlock's haunted woods, they came across something truly unimaginable: an ancient stone structure, half buried in the earth. The structure appeared to be a long-forgotten temple or shrine, designed with intricate carvings of figures and symbols that none of the researchers could fully comprehend. It was clear that the structure had been built by a people long gone, a people who had worshipped the very land they had settled on. The carvings on the walls were of creatures, giant humanoid beings that looked like the descriptions of the Nanak. Some of the carvings even depicted battles between these giants and otherworldly creatures. The more the researchers studied the carvings, the more it seemed that the Nanak and its kin were not merely protectors of the land. They were part of a larger, ancient war, a war between the forces of nature and those who sought to control it. Suddenly, the group was struck by a loud, reverberating sound, like a massive roar echoing through the trees. The earth beneath their feet seemed to tremble, and the sky darkened, as if the forest itself had sensed their presence and was reacting. Fear set in as they realized they were not alone. Something or someone was watching them from the darkness. The group immediately began to pack up their equipment, but before they could escape, a massive figure appeared before them, its glowing eyes piercing the darkness, its massive form nearly blocking out the moon. The Nanak had returned. The creature stepped forward, its huge form towering over them. It was unlike anything the researchers had expected, a creature whose presence was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The roar it let out shook the ground beneath their feet, and the group realized they had ventured too far into the territory of the creature. The Nanak had awakened not just to protect the land, but to send a message. The researchers realized they had made a grave mistake in disturbing the sacred place. But as they tried to retreat, the creature was gone. They were left with more questions than answers, their minds reeling with the knowledge that they had witnessed something no one could explain. But was the Nanak truly gone? Or had the creature been waiting for the perfect moment to strike again? The curse that never ends. The expedition team returned from their journey, but they left behind a town that was more than just abandoned. Portlock had become a symbol of fear, a place where the ancient forces of the land had struck back, defending the secrets buried deep within the earth. The mystery of Portlock remained unsolved, and the truth about the Nanak lingered in the air like an unspoken warning. Although the town had been abandoned for decades, the haunting presence of the creature remained. The few brave souls who dared to venture into Portlock after the researchers left reported strange phenomena: eerie sounds at night, shadows moving between the trees, and a sense of being watched. It was as if the land itself had taken on a life of its own, protecting its secrets with a terrifying vengeance. The town of Portlock, once a thriving community, had become a cursed place, one that would remain haunted by the spectre of the Nanak, and by the ancient forces that had been disturbed by the arrival of outsiders. No one knew if the curse would ever be lifted, or if the creature would one day return to claim what had once been its own. The truth, it seemed, was as elusive as the Nanak itself. But one thing was certain: Portlock's ghostly story would live on, echoing through the winds of Alaska's forests, a chilling reminder that there are some forces in this world that are not meant to be disturbed. Could the curse of Portlock ever truly be broken? Or will the town remain forever lost to the terror of the Nanak? The forgotten voices. The unsettling quiet of Portlock, now a ghost town, had not only deterred people from visiting, but also left its haunting secrets buried deep within the forest. The locals, whose ancestors had once lived there, had long stopped telling stories of the Nanak, afraid that speaking its name would invite its wrath. However, over the years, a few brave souls, adventurers, thrill-seekers, and urban explorers, had returned to the site, hoping to uncover more about what happened to the town. Each time they came back with their own chilling experiences, though none had ever dared to stay long enough to unravel the mystery fully. In 2003, a group of historians from a nearby university, researching ancient Alaskan folklore, decided to visit Portlock to gather any remaining records of the settlement. They had heard rumors of strange markings and unexplained events, and though some were skeptical, others were convinced that the missing pieces of history were locked away in the town's remains. Armed with only their research and cameras, the group ventured deep into the town, determined to uncover the truth. One of them, a seasoned historian named Margaret Davies, was particularly intrigued by stories of ghostly voices heard late at night. Local legends told of these voices echoing through the wind, carried from the abandoned houses to the dense trees that bordered the settlement. Margaret, convinced that these were just tales designed to scare people off, was determined to prove otherwise. However, when the group set up camp near what was once the town's meeting hall, something very strange occurred. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, the wind seemed to pick up, howling through the trees, and then they heard it, the sound of soft murmurs. At first they dismissed it as the wind, but the voices grew louder, sharper, like whispers of long-dead inhabitants still roaming the woods. The voices were not clear at first, but as the night wore on, the group began to decipher words. In a chilling moment of realization, they could make out one phrase repeating, "Don't wake it." As the words echoed through the night, the group froze, the weight of the words sinking in. It was a warning, a message from the past. Margaret, shaking with both fear and excitement, immediately began recording the sounds. But when they played the footage back later, there was no trace of the voices. It was as if they had been erased from time itself. Yet the dread still lingered, a feeling they could not shake. The historian group departed the next morning, uneasy and with no concrete evidence to prove the voices had ever existed. Yet, the unease followed them back to the university, where they spent weeks analyzing the footage. Though the voices were gone, the lingering feeling of dread remained in their minds, as if the curse of Portlock was not finished with them. Could it be that the voices of the past were not simply a warning, but an invitation to uncover something even darker? What was Portlock hiding beneath its ghostly silence? The mark of the Nanak. As the decades passed, Portlock continued to sit in silence, as if the town itself had been cursed into eternal stillness. Yet there were whispers in nearby villages, stories passed from one generation to the next, about strange lights seen over the trees at night. Some claimed the Nanak had been disturbed once more, its mighty guardian spirit awakened by some force of fate. The true events surrounding Portlock may have been lost to time, but one thing was certain: the creature, or whatever it truly was, had left its mark on the land. But in recent years, a new theory began to surface, a theory that could finally explain the curse of Portlock once and for all. A group of archaeologists, led by Dr. James Helms, ventured to the site after hearing reports of strange readings and unusual electromagnetic activity detected in the area. Armed with the latest technology, including ground-penetrating radar and sophisticated mapping tools, they set out to explore the area in a way never done before. The team was specifically investigating the burial site, where they had heard stories of enormous bones buried beneath the earth. Their goal was to locate the exact position of these remains and possibly uncover clues that would finally put the mystery of the Nanak to rest. However, as they ventured deeper into the forest, they encountered something that neither science nor folklore could explain. While using the radar to map the area, the team found what appeared to be an underground chamber, a large, hollow space beneath the earth, perhaps the size of a small house. It was an area untouched by time, buried deep under layers of earth, its existence unknown to even the most seasoned experts. Upon further excavation, they discovered several ancient artifacts scattered around the entrance, including what appeared to be large stone tablets with more markings that mirrored those seen in the carvings and legends of the Nanak. Dr. Helms theorized that this chamber was far more than a burial site. It was a sanctuary, a temple where the giants or their ancestors had worshipped an ancient force of nature. The more they uncovered, the more they realized that the legends of the Nanak were not just stories. They were accounts of ancient beings, guardians of a sacred place. But as they delved deeper into the chamber, things took a terrifying turn. The air grew thick and heavy. The team felt a sudden pressure in their chests, as though something was closing in on them. Some described an overwhelming sense of dread, a cold shiver running down their spines. The deeper they went, the stronger the feeling became, and several members of the team reported seeing fleeting shadows moving in the corners of their vision. Then, without warning, the ground shook beneath them, and the radar equipment malfunctioned. One by one, their instruments began to fail, cameras turned off, flashlights flickered, and the screens went black. And then, just as quickly as it had started, it stopped. Everything returned to an eerie, suffocating silence. The team left the site abruptly, unable to explain what had just occurred. They packed up their equipment, but not without one final horrifying sight. As they turned to leave, they caught a glimpse of something enormous moving through the trees. A shadow, not quite human, yet towering in size. It was gone in an instant, leaving them to question if what they had seen was a figment of their imagination, or the return of the Nanak. The team had uncovered a secret that had remained hidden for centuries. But was it a secret meant to be forgotten? Was the Nanak's return inevitable? The Nanak's legacy. The mystery of Portlock, the Nanak, and the ancient power that protected the land remained unsolved, but the terror the town had once experienced lived on. The forces at play in the forests were far beyond human understanding, tied to the very land itself, and perhaps even to the ancient beings that had once walked the earth. What the researchers uncovered was just the beginning of a much darker story, one that had been written into the land itself. The remains of giants, the strange symbols, the whispers on the wind, these were not just random occurrences. They were clues to a far more sinister truth. The Nanak was not merely a creature, it was a guardian, a protector of an ancient and sacred land that could not be disturbed. And while many may have thought the story of Portlock was over, the truth was that the land would continue to guard its secrets, waiting for the next person foolish enough to enter its boundaries. The Nanak would return, as it always had, to remind humanity that some places are best left untouched. As the last of the researchers left the forest, they couldn't shake the feeling that the land had been watching them, silently waiting for them to uncover its dark secrets. The curse of Portlock had not ended. It had merely been passed to those who dared to uncover it. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, be sure to check out our other videos. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling stories.